Hello and welcome everybody. I'm so excited. Today we have Lisa Setti. She is one of our chaplains at Ascend Hospice, and she's going to talk with me and you a little bit about the spiritual and cultural dimensions of end-of-life care. And Lisa, I'm so grateful for you coming in today and talking with us about this, because I think that this is one of the most important things that we can help patients and their families to cope with at the end of life. You know, the end of life is so challenging because we're all heading into the great unknown. And so this gives us a lot of closure in regards to our faith and where we believe we're going to be going. And faiths can be so different.
Mhm.
And we need to be able to respect those faiths and to be able to navigate those different challenges that everyone might have, because grief can be shared in a different way. And oftentimes the spiritual aspect can be a very calming effect. And so I'm just so grateful for your knowledge and your wisdom and your experience that you're going to share with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. So first and foremost, I always like to put up a little disclaimer that this is not intended to treat. This is for educational purposes only. All right. So a little bit about Wellspring Healthcare. We believe in the power of compassion, effective communication, and empowering education to transform lives. And that's why we bring these webinars out there to our patients, is so that we can help to educate the populace and the masses. So, of course, we have our contact screen. Let's go ahead and keep in touch. If we have any one that's interested in working with us, don't hesitate to reach out to our numbers. We have William at 816-708-1661. And we also have Brandy, who will be in charge for all of our facilities, 16708-1658. And of course, you can always visit us on our website at wellspringhealthcare.org. All right, so let's just jump into this. So what is spiritual and cultural dimensions of end-of-life care? So I have a few things up here on the screen, but I'd really like to get your take on this, Lisa. How do you define someone's spiritual and cultural dimensions of end-of-life care? Because that's a big umbrella kind of term.
It definitely is. And, and everybody is. So people will come to us and sometimes want to decline being spiritual supporters, say we don't want a chaplain. But I come into it with this idea or feeling that we are coming in there to save their process, and that's not our goal. Really, our goal is just to meet them where they are, because everybody's spiritual, and spirituality is about like connecting to others and connecting to their world and finding meaning and purpose. That's kind of what it all wraps up into.
I love that, Lisa, because I do. I think that's so, there's so much variation. Just because you maybe don't go to a church or belong to a church or a faith or whatever, it doesn't mean that you're not spiritual in some way. And I think that there's that connecting on a deeper level, that emotional level, that spiritual level that can be so, and that's that powerful form of connection that we have I think as human beings,
Right.
That really helps to separate us there. So that's wonderful. So I have a few things here. I think the other thing is spiritual beliefs. And I think this goes to some of what you were saying too, about we're all spiritual in regards to the different cultural practices as well too.
Correct.
That we want to make sure that we're providing that overall holistic care. And I love how you said meeting a patient where they are.
Right.
And helping them to navigate these challenges on their own, and to make sure that they feel that they have that support and that their family has that support to help them navigate it. Do you often find challenges in regards to the spiritual aspects among families, where maybe one family member is, more heavily spiritual, whereas another family is less heavily spiritual, and then you got the patient in the middle?
Right.
Do you ever find those types of situations?
Definitely. We've had, I've walked into families Well, I remember one time when, in particular, when a daughter-in-law said, "You really need to go down there and pray with him that he can find his way to." And I'm like, I'm going to go down there and we're going to have a conversation, and God's going to meet him where he is. So, before we're not there to save souls because God, the big picture, right?
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Just navigate it. Everybody has these answers that they're seeking within themselves, and we just help them find them.
That.
So
that's beautiful. Everybody has these answers that they're seeking within themselves. That was powerful enough to repeat. I love that, Lisa. That's great. All right. So with that, let's move on to our next slide. Yep. So understanding our end of life care. And I think it's so challenging so often for our patients to just simply accept their initially, right? So they get this diagnosis or whatever the case may be, or they find out that they are declining. And some of our patients do have severe dementia and may not recognize that they are declining. But I think in that situation, we're often helping to deal with the family members for a lot of those patients. But when we do have a patient that is cognizant and is aware and knows what they're facing, I think it's a very important aspect of their care to address, at the forefront, to say this is an important aspect of you as a person. Your spirituality is important to you as a person, and I think finding that compassionate approach can be very helpful. So I think, like you said, Lisa, it's sometimes religion, right? If we're going to use those words, religion can be a very hot button topic, right? It's things that we don't usually talk about in the workplace. We're not going to talk about religion and politics, right? Because they can become very divisive. So how do you find the ability to approach faith, spirituality? How do you go about navigating that so that someone doesn't feel like you're there to save their soul? What's your go-to? How do you go about doing that?
You just listen. Really. I mean, people we don't listen to each other. So you listen, you ask questions. Where do you find hope? Strength. Where do you find action? And answers, they find their own spiritual path.
I love that. Where do you find hope? Where do you find strength? And where do you find answers?
Or connection.
Connection. Where do you find connection? I love that. That's awesome. That's super powerful, because it really is. That's going in and it's like you're guiding the patient along their process. You're kind of like that cheerleader, that coach that's there, that's just talking to them and saying, I'm here to listen to you so that you can tell me what your own pathway is and what your own journey is. Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Heard is very important.
Absolutely. No, that's really powerful. So we have here now, these are things that we've talked about in depth, where we've talked about some palliative care and then our hospice care and our advanced care planning. And I think that it's an important rediscussion in regards to this. So palliative care, for those that aren't aware, we're going to want you to link to some of our other videos on palliative care, but it focuses on relieving symptoms and improving quality of life for patients with serious illness. And then we have hospice care, which is what we a lot of the time do at Ascend Healthcare. We are a specific type of palliative care where patients are nearing the end of life and they have a prognosis of 6 months or less, and it provides this comprehensive support. And then we have our advanced care planning features, which involves discussing and documenting a patient's wishes regarding their end-of-life care. Now, one of the reasons that I think that this is in here, Lisa, is because what it does is it readdresses that along this continuum of care, right, from palliative care where we're still managing symptoms, the spiritual aspect comes into play, because again, we have this patient that may have been diagnosed with a terminal condition or a serious illness like cancer, and now they're starting to contemplate their own mortality,
right?
And we're starting to bring up big questions in regards to want to be resuscitated. That's part of that advanced care planning part. How do you see your role in helping patients and family members to grapple with these serious illness situations?
Right. Well, you find out, ask questions about values,
Mm-hmm.
see the world and how they see themselves fitting in the world. And again, with those answers, they know what they want for end of life planning. So, they can say, they can verbalize the things that how they want to be treated, how they want to be cared for, and they can even make some plans for after they're gone. And make
That's true.
known to their loved ones.
That's wonderful. And I can imagine, I do know that, especially when I work in the hospital-based setting, it's sometimes very challenging for family members because they're like, gosh, I don't know. Now this horrible thing has happened to mom or dad or grandma and grandpa, and I don't know what grandma and grandpa wanted. So the ability for that family member to impart what it is that they want, during this period of life that they have, this new season that they're in,
Right.
And then in the season after they're gone too, to be able to say, this is what I would want, maybe they want to be cremated, but the family member doesn't know that they would want to be cremated, So I think that can be really, really powerful.
It can be very rich conversations.
Absolutely. I think about, I don't know if you're a fan of Ted Lasso,
No,
but yeah, Keely on that show, she was, I remember one time she was with Roy and they were going to Rebecca's father's funeral, and that brought up some questions about like what she wanted. And she said, I read about this thing where I can be buried and turned into a tree, and she's like, I like the idea of people being able to take nourishment from the apple that my tree would grow. And Roy initially took that as like, why would you want that? That's horrible, But it was because of his own insecurities in terms of talking about it. And he ends up later in the episode talking about that. But I think it's great that we can have these discussions. And I think these discussions are extremely important to help our family members and help ourselves to kind of even work through those processes of what would I really want? Because I've never even given that a lot of thought to begin with.
Right. We have people who sometimes come on hospice, and the families don't want us to say the word hospice because it's that big taboo, that big word of fear. And what usually ends up coming out of that is that the family thinks that the patient is scared of the word, but the patient thinks the family is scared of the word. It's happening. And nobody does it with each other.
Sure.
So being able to open up those lines of communication can be tricky, but also very fulfilling.
Absolutely. I can imagine that just gives you that great sense of accomplishment when you're able to walk out of that patient encounter with that family and to be able to say, we made a step, even if we didn't answer all of the issues, we made a step in the right direction, because I think that's what we're always trying to do, is just keep walking in the path of improvement, and getting better.
Yeah.
So, well, perfect. So we have here some key components, of course, of end-of-life care are pain and symptom management. And I often think of that more in the physical component, but there is significant emotional and spiritual pain. And I think that sometimes that's an incredible opportunity for you as chaplains to help to bridge that gap. In the period of time that I've been with Ascend Hospice and the number of patients that we've cared for, personally participating, and I've seen so many incredible stories of patients and their loved ones showing some reconciliation, coming back together, mending bridges that had been seemingly burned, that can be reforged and crafted. And I think that that's really, really powerful. And I think that those people that don't have those relationships, the chaplain portion of our team plays an incredible role in regards to helping to be that spiritual guide and to help people to heal from a spiritual perspective. How do you see that aspect of treating the spiritual pain or the spiritual, I don't know if pain's the right word, Lisa, help me with that, because
Pain, pure spiritual distress. Yeah.
spiritual distress. Yeah.
Well, part of it, some people have shame. Some people may come to us and say that they have done things that they are ashamed of, in past life. And once you can get them to open up and unburden themselves, they have, this release of just letting it go. And those are very rewarding, times. Members, like, this morning I sat with a patient's grandson for 2 hours and he just talked. 2 hours. Just go of some things that he hasn't been able to say to family members and holding on to lots of grief. It's nice to be able to see somebody just to be able to kind of shed some of the burdens that we carry around as human beings.
Oh, it is. It is. And it's so important because, we've all experienced it where we have an event in our life or even some sort of, seemingly trivial matter, right? Where it's like, I feel bad about this, or like you said, I feel shame about this, or I'm upset about this. And initially you're like, well, I can't tell that to so-and-so because if I tell that to so-and-so, then they're going to think of me differently,
right,
or they're going to whatever. And then all of a sudden you share that with the person and it's like, all of a sudden this giant relief has been taken off of you.
Right.
And so, the fact that we have chaplains and the support team from hospice amongst everybody, not just chaplains, but also our social workers and our case managers and things of that nature. But I think that it's just so reassuring for patients and their families to be able to have that additional emotional and spiritual support.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So we kind of talked a little bit about this, but of course we have our spiritual care, providing the spiritual support according to the patient's beliefs and values. So Lisa, let's talk about that because we started off the presentation here talking about how, people have different faiths. And as a chaplain coming in, you have clearly a wide breadth of knowledge and expertise. How do you find that you're able to navigate the complexities of multiple different spiritual aspects in your day-to-day? I can imagine that's a significant challenge.
Right. It can be. We have patients who are Hindu, who are Jewish, who are Christian, who are Catholic. You may think Catholic is the same as Christian, and it is, but it has its own unique things,
Sure.
Yeah. Just had a new patient who is Brethren tradition, and that's kind of beautiful to kind of learn more about their and it's a learning experience for each one of us too sometimes, because our faith different, but just being cognizant of the need that each one has, spiritual looking for the rituals that each faith or belief system share, they're beautiful and meaningful, and just being able to support them in all those rituals that each. If I just answered your question or not?
No, I think you did. Yeah, and I think it goes back to a lot of the stuff that you said earlier as well too. Is being someone who listens, right? And how you said, I'm willing to meet someone where they are. That you're not coming in trying to be the new religious leader for that person. You're that support person that helps them in terms of navigating their end of life journey in conjunction with their spiritual home and their spiritual leaders and those different types of processes. Because I think that's one of the things I really want to make sure that we're continuing to address is that, as a chaplain for Ascend Hospice or any other hospice company for that matter, your role is not to come in and replace that religious leader, but is to support that the family, to support those other dynamics that are at play to help people with that. So I think it's wonderful. And I think it's great, the different types of respect for the rituals. I think it's, like you said before, it's so interesting you get to learn about somebody else's religion. And that's something that a lot of people hold as like a core belief.
Yeah.
And so they feel very strongly about that. And so the opportunity to learn from them, I think is a really unique and interesting experience. And I love the opportunity to share in that.
Yes.
It's just really, it's part of our job, isn't
It
it?
really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're
Absolutely. No, and I think on that same note, we have here, of course, in terms of considerations, not only religious tolerances and things of that nature, but cultural sensitivity as well,
sure.
too. Very important that we're respecting and incorporating all of those different aspects into our regular encounters and
Yeah.
our beliefs.
Yeah.
So, and then I think we've hit communication over the head with an anvil here. And I think the reason that we do that is because it is so important to maintain those open, honest, and compassionate communications between the healthcare providers, their patients, and their families. And like you said, listening.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the problems, Lisa, and I know you see it every day, is that patients, unfortunately, don't feel listened to.
Right.
Whether that's because physicians, and I'm speaking as a physician, are being pulled in a number of different directions, and we have a finite amount of time to spend with someone.
Right.
And so that's one of the things that I really greatly value from our Ascend team is the amount of time that people are able to devote. Like you mentioned, spending 2 hours with that grandson earlier today. And that's just an incredible gift that we're able to give to people in terms of that time.
Yeah.
And that open, honest, and compassionate communication.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So considerations in end-of-life care. We kind of talked about our quality of life. And of course, our multidisciplinary approach is huge because we want to make sure that we are addressing these patients and their terminal conditions from all aspects of their care, including, their spiritual aspect, their medical aspect. I love our music therapy that is a conjunction to all of this. And I know what's really powerful is when we often combine some of these modalities. Jude, one of our other chaplains, he talks a lot about how he gets the opportunity to have music therapy come in, and then he'll read his stories and really just get this incredible, I can just feel the ambiance that they've set up in the patient's room. And you don't think of a dying patient's room as necessarily the most calm and relaxing and comfortable environment, but as they describe it, it's like, wow, I can imagine someone would be able to get a lot of peace in that moment of being able to do that. What are some of the other aspects of multidisciplinary care where our chaplains will work diligently with our patients in terms of finding something that works for them?
The team as a discipline, we always communicate with each other to find out, where each other can help with any patients. And we're also good at reaching out. Our nurses and social workers will contact me often and say, "Hey, Lisa, I really think this family could use a phone call from you," and we do that. We do that in conjunction, like you said, with the music therapists. I love when I can meet up with them and we can partner up just to help a person find some peace. We do sometimes do services, officiate end-of-life services, all celebrations of life. And families like that, we partner up with their personal pastors or rabbis or, their spiritual leaders as well to make sure that their needs are being met. There's just a whole range of we can partner with the community itself. The maybe lives, if they live in a nursing home or assisted living, we'll partner with those staff members too, just to make sure all
that's wonderful.
Care of.
Absolutely. No, that's wonderful. All right. So we already kind of talked a little bit about we're going to assess their spiritual and cultural needs. We're going to kind of work together to create that care plan that respects their spiritual and cultural preferences. And then you already mentioned, is a foreshadowing here, I think, about working with other chaplains and spiritual advisors and cultural mediators. And then, of course, all the while taking in those ethical considerations and challenges, of course. So in summary here, The spiritual and cultural dimensions are vital in our end of life care, and they contribute to a comprehensive, respectful, and personalized support for patients and their families during one of these most critical phases in the family's lives. And so I just think it's an incredible opportunity that we have to work with a lot of these families, and help them in terms of coming to grips with the difficult challenges that they're actively facing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. The life is
wonderful.
a very holy time,
It-
to journeying, with our patients and their families. It's very much an honor to be in that journey with them.
I love that. I love that journey. Well, Lisa, thank you again so very much. I greatly appreciate your time, your energy, and your expertise in talking to us about the spiritual aspects of end of life care. So thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining.